Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:05 p.m. Central. Wham's here representing with us tonight. How's it going, Wham?
Oh, it's going okay. I've been recovering from a cold, but
Well, I'm glad you're
it's
doing
okay.
better. I've
Yeah.
had something this week. I don't know what the hell it is. It just feels ugh. And it's at the tail end, hopefully. And glad you're feeling better. And Sally Crow's here with us tonight. How's it going? It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good. It's the summer. It's around the summer solstice, and it's beautiful. And we've had really good weather the last couple days. So I'm pretty happy.
And your book is Spirit Speaker, A Medium's Guide to Death and Dying.
Yes.
And I know in the intro, your sister, right? You speak of your father who passed. That was, for my experiences, that was a catalyst for me as well. Just briefly, 17, I went through testicular cancer and chemo. It sucked. And then a few years later, my dad died. And somehow all of that suffering brought on a lot of weird experiences, from beings of light visiting me and seeing them with my naked eye, from some strange UFO stuff, so some ghost stuff. But my father's death, he was definitely a persistent individual. So I think a lot of it was him trying to reach me from the other side, and then somehow a bunch of other weird stuff got thrown into it. But that was your sister, right, with the intro?
Yeah. Well, my sister did write the intro, but I have been psychic my whole life, as has my sister. Um, we grew up in a family where my father was raised by his grandmother, so my great grandmother, who was part Blackfoot and part Irish traveler, was somebody that people went to see in town to talk to their dead, to look into their future, to give them, healing tinctures and things like that. And so we were being taught from the time we were very little. So my father's death I'm a storyteller too. So I talk about things that I've been present in. And my dad's death was really powerful because that's my dad's family. So my dad had actually developed a lot of his own gifts before he died. And so he's really been a very good communicator, and part of, like, I use him often when I'm teaching as a spirit because he's easier to see.
And what were some of the catalysts for your gifts? What were things that happened that made you start to think that you had gifts?
So I don't remember not having that be part of my life. I was communicating with people. Myself and my sister were both communicating through mirrors when we were like 3, 4 years old. And my grandmother could see things too. So my first experience would happen when I was only a few months old, when my father's mother died. And I don't personally remember that experience, but my grandmother would tell me about it often, that I saw my grandmother and was interacting with her. I started reading cards for the public when I was 18 years old. So I've been working in the field for over 30 years. And when I was 30, I had a major opening to spirit, in which I wrote about that in my first book, Jump Girl, The Initiation and Art of a Spirit Speaker, because that was when my ability to communicate with spirits went from like 10 to 100 in difference in my intensity. So I've worked as a psychic medium for the last 20 years.
And did you see them visually, or was it more of a feeling, or all of the above?
All of the above. I'm a person who's a multi-sensory medium, which means I see them with my eyes, I see them in my mind's eye, I can hear them, I can smell them, they've touched me. I don't really allow spirits to do that when I'm working, but I have been touched by spirit. So yes, I'm a multi-sensory medium.
Well, one of my big experiences that was very weird for me was seeing these beings of light.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw two down here in Florida. I was in my home and something told me to go outside, and I turned towards my house and I saw two as if they had been inside my home and flew straight into the heavens. And it was like two people made of light. It was
Yeah.
bizarre.
I've
And
encountered beings of light as well.
well, what are your experiences with those, and what do you think they are? I know I've heard everything from angels to aliens to deceased loved ones. I mean, there's so many theories.
Well, I think that they didn't tell me what they were. So I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you my opinion, but I think that a lot of times, I think they were probably something that was extra dimensional or what other people might consider extraterrestrial. Sometimes I think that it's more of a dimensional shift than it is a um, physical being moving from space to space. But I think that they're like the energy I felt off of them was high vibration and positive. It did not feel like it was threatening or endangering at all when I had the experience. And, so I can understand why people might say that it felt like angels or it felt like it was a high vibration being. That's what I can tell you. But I don't really, my specialty is with beloved dead. Like I do a lot of stuff and I work with elemental beings too, because my second book, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, is it's filled with stories and techniques on how to connect with elemental beings. But I don't really work so much with extraterrestrial beings or I think that there's so many, like knowing everything's name and what it is. Like I would love it if somebody created some kind of encyclopedia like that, but I would love it if people just created an encyclopedia of fairy folk that was regional. So like I think that we're just a long ways from understanding what everything is.
Definitely, and we've had American Indians talk about the fairy folks, and was it the
Mhm.
Arthur of Iroquois Supernatural? He would tell stories about the corn husk harvest and trading,
Mhm.
and they would come up and stuff like that. And those stories are always fascinating. And then, of course, a lot of people tie UFO stuff into the fairy lore that's
Yeah,
maybe similar.
it is true. Well, the lore, a lot of the lore is very similar. A lot of like people like being lost and, like maybe disappearing or people having shifts in time. That's another thing that seems to be common, like lost moments of time and a lot of the vibrations. That's why I said, like, I don't think that we know enough, but I do think that, especially when you look at fairy lore, it's older. And so the way that they would describe it would be different than how we describe it with science that we have nowadays. Do you know what I mean? So there could be
Yes.
a tie between the two. I've had a lot of personal encounters with elemental and fairy beings, though. So for me, um, my work job is working with people's beloved dead. Like people come to me when they're in mourning, when they need to heal, when they need to talk to their husband, wife, children, father that's passed over.
And when you've seen deceased loved ones visually, like a ghost per se, are they? How do they look? Do they look like they normally are in this life? Like how do they normally look visually? Like
Well, that
clothes
depends.
and
It depends on the spirit. Some spirits actually who could have died in their 80s might like to come through showing themselves like what they looked like when they were in their 50s because they I kind of joke and say those are the more people who I know had a little bit of vanity. They don't want to be seen as that sickness because when we die, we can look like what we want to. So, for example, my father has a glass eye. He lost his eye in Vietnam. And while my dad doesn't need to have only one eye now, he still usually comes forward looking that way because it's easier for people to recognize him because he went so much of his life with only one eye. Okay. So it really depends on the spirit.
it always fascinates me the ghost clothes. Like you see a ghost as like a Civil War soldier.
Yeah.
It's almost like they can shapeshift or something because I really doubt
So,
they have real clothes and that.
well,
you
they
know,
absolutely, they don't have real physical body. They can look like whatever they want to. So they can change their appearance. And more elevated spirits or spirits. So if a person's psychic in life, they're going to be more adapted to manipulating the spirit world, changing their appearance, doing all of that kind of stuff because they have more knowledge already. But spirit can look like what they want to look like. They can dress like what they want to dress like. Some of them are more interested in showing their physical appearance. Some of them don't care as much to do that. Just like in life, some of us are more concerned about our physical appearance than other people.
What about what you die in, you wear forever? I've heard
No, I
that
don't
one.
think that at all.
There was some guy going around dressing all flamboyantly, like I don't know what kind of clothes it was, because that was his theory. So he would wear like this weird, outrageous stuff
I
all the
have
time.
not experienced that.
Yeah, that I would be a Scooby Doo shirt and shorts from Walmart today. That wouldn't be good. But so in these cases, does anything come up where the deceased loved one can't move on because they need to do something like you see in the movies? I mean, what are some of the things that come up with these communications?
This
I
is
know
like,
there's a
I
lot.
say that what my communications are, they're like family reunions. Like the person, I want facts. So spirits have to give real, like not just I love you, I miss you, that kind of stuff, but they usually talk about personal things. One of the first seances I ever did, the people, I had already given them a lot of different information about their grandfather that I was talking to. But this spirit kept showing me a giant rooster. And I did not want to at first say that because it seemed really obscure and strange. But finally, I was like, look, he keeps showing me a giant rooster. I don't know why. And they started laughing because he actually had a giant rooster statue in his front yard. So one of the things is that spirits come through and they usually talk about what illness they had. Really what people are looking for is they're looking for proof that this is their relative and or their loved one. And so there's usually they talk about their death, they talk about their life, they talk about things that might be happening in the living person's life at that time period because that's their way of saying that they're still around them. I've had spirits talk about, you'll like this one because you guys like the more unusual things. But I had a young woman who the first time I did worked with her, I told her that her mom was coming through and I said, you just got married. And your mom said that she was in a photo. And the young woman was like, no, my mom died before my wedding. And I said, no, but I know that. I said, but your mom's saying she was in a photo. And she said that there's a picture of you and your father and your sister, and that there is an orb on the other side of you. And the woman, it was true. There really was. There was a picture taken, and her mom basically coming through that seance was giving her proof that I was at your wedding. You did feel me. So there's a lot of that. There's also a lot of sometimes spirits will come through and they'll talk to, like if it's a partner who's died and they still have children, they might be giving advice. Like I say it's like I'm at a family reunion for other people and I'm like helping them communicate.
So what do you mean by the gray?
Gray is a space that we go into when we can no longer heal. So when somebody is passing, they can go into what I was given the term the gray from the spirits that I work with as a way of describing this space where you are actively dying. And most of the time, that doesn't last for more than a year and a half. Somebody could be in that space. Most of the time, it's a lot shorter than that. But the description that I use is that we know that a person is coming into this life because a mother becomes pregnant. We see the belly growing. We know that a new life is coming in. So it's a physical sign. For the spirits, when somebody has stepped into the gray, they become more tangible in the spirit world, which means that their dead loved ones can know that they're coming and can gather around to share or welcome them. And a medium is someone who also can be considered existing in the gray because they also show up more, they're more tangible in the spirit world than most people.
And here's some background. I don't know exactly what it is, but sometimes I wonder if all these StreamYard shows like uh, glitch and leak into other shows because we've had weird stuff where we heard drums, had other weird stuff. So I don't know. It's like some kind of weird background. Um, oh yeah, I was seeing Brigga. Is that Norse or Celtic? And
Brescia. It's she's a druid. She was a
Brescia,
druid. Brescia. Yeah.
Brescia.
It's
Okay.
a variant of Bridget because she had a sacred relationship with the goddess Bridget.
Okay, I think I have a book about that. It's like they call her a saint in some people,
Yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
okay,
Bridget
yeah.
is a Irish goddess and saint. So basically, she was so loved by the Irish people that they wouldn't let her go, and so the Catholics turned her into a saint. And I've been to Ireland multiple times, and they where her fire temple is, they where the old ancient fire temple is, there's now a cathedral to Bridget in which they have both pagan and Christian information in. So it's actually a true, cathedral to her with her story. But anyways, Brescia had a very close relationship with Bridget, and so that was her sacred name or the name that she chose to go by.
And when you talk about your fae or the fairy type experiences, do those come up visually as well? I mean, what is that like?
Yes. Yes. Well, it depends on the being and but I can experience them multidimensionally. I've had some pretty profound experience. My book, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, um, was inspired by a experience I had in Mount Shasta with the spirit of water. And that led me first to incorporating actively working with water when I was doing healing work on people. And then I reached out to my publisher, and which is Inner Traditions, and basically suggested that I wanted to do a book on water magic because of that experience, but that I thought that it should be one book for each of the elements, and they wanted it all in one book. But it is instructional. That book will help people to learn how to open up in different ways that elemental beings communicate and all sorts of stuff. It's 576 pages. So
Wow.
that one is a very big, it's like a tome.
In any of your experiences, have any cloak type beings come up? There was one point in my younger years, had been reading a Celtic, like other world type book, and me and a friend saw some beings that were in cloaks in the woods, and they're very small and skinny, kind of like Jawas, but not fat like Jawas, like skinny, and you couldn't see their faces. And there were three, and there was a black box, and I always trip out trying to figure out what that black box was.
Yeah,
But
I don't have any particular experience with that particular type of being. That's one of the reasons why, like, if you look up fairy lore, there is, encyclopedias of different types of fairy folk. And I've
yes,
seen a lot of things that I don't know what they are. One of the things that's why I was saying, like, I ideally wish that there was some kind of encyclopedia that literally was by region, because like I've been to Iceland, and when I went to Iceland, 55% of the population believes in the fairy folk. They have their own that they call the Huda folk, or the hidden one folk. But outside of the city of Reykjavik, there is actually a fairy garden. You can go and you can get a map of the different places around the city which have spaces to different types of fairy folk. So that's like different countries have different fairy beings or different elemental beings, different names for them. There's so much out there that, you know, it's
does trickster stuff ever come up? I know there's a lot with that, with fairies and stuff, and then I love all the different stuff from different cultures about that for
yeah.
sure. The trickster,
Yeah, there's
trickster energy.
definitely trickster energy that you can encounter. And as my profession is a psychic medium, I also teach classes on witchcraft, and so I've done a lot of interesting things. I don't really do spirit communication for entertainment. I wouldn't do haunted houses because I would be wanting to help those spirits cross over. When I go to a house that is having a problem or a piece of property that's having a problem, my goal is to go and help figure out first what kind of beings are there or whether they're actually harmful or not, whether we can negotiate so that everybody gets to stay in place, and sometimes helping things to cross over. But I, my work is generally more, I want to say it's more mainstream than that. You know, like I literally have an office and a studio right in the downtown of my community. I grew my business word of mouth. So I see people of all kinds, and they come to me primarily. Counselors send people to me. So, you know, I was on the school board for 9 years. My job is actually pretty normal, and I haven't had a lot of personal experiences with these other beings you're talking about, but that's not really like what Spirit Speaker is about or any of that. Spirit Speaker was a book that I wrote for everyday people who, because it was answering all the questions that my clients usually ask about what happens when you die, how spirits communicate with us, you know, places that are in between when somebody's dying that affects both the living and the dead.
I've seen a lot of people on Facebook, families who have lost a child, and I just couldn't imagine that. And I've seen it like 3 or 4 times in the last 2 weeks
Yeah.
on social media. Does
Hmm.
that come up where they want to communicate with the child to get some?
Yes. Yes.
It's just so
I've
tragic. And then,
I
oh,
have I've worked, I mean, I've done this for 20 years for the public. And like I said, counselors send people to me, bereavement groups send people to me. And so I have worked with people who've lost children. I've worked with people who've lost their children, who the child took their own life. I've worked with people who, you know, lost babies. I once had a whole seance. I had a group of people come to see me who had, maybe there was like 6 of them. And when I sat down in the room with them, I realized they all had lost children. They were actually a bereavement group, and they came together, and they were a bereavement group for parents who lost children. One of the things I try to tell people if they've lost a child is that we need to remember that when we cross into spirit, we become all that we are. So that child does not have to take the consciousness of a 2-year-old or a 7-year-old. They, in many ways, can evolve to be that true spirit that they are. And that part of the healing process I usually work with people around is helping them to change the relationship they have with their dead so that they can create a sacred relationship with their dead, whether that's their child or their partner. And that helps with healing, because the reality of it is while we are no longer embodied, that doesn't mean we don't exist.
what is a two-way police mirror? Is that mirror work or is that something else? Like, I know you'd mentioned mirror work and stuff, and
No, it's more a description talking about um, when we, the way that spirit sees and the way that we see. I use a police mirror to describe it because the spirit, the dead, are on the side that a police officer would be on, in which they can see into the room or see their loved ones clearly. They can see them, they can hear them. Their trouble is getting their living loved one to be able to hear or see them, because the living loved one is on the other side of the mirror, in which they cannot see who's on the other side of that mirror. Sometimes they might feel someone's there, but they don't have as clear of a communication. And a medium is the person who can walk between the rooms and say, this is what they're saying. Okay. They can go in between. So it has nothing to do with somebody being in trouble or anything to do with scrying. It has to do simply with the way that spirit is able to see us and hear us much more clearly than we are able to hear or see them. So when you're talking to your dead, you might not be able to hear them or see them, but they can hear and see you. So talk to them. They're still there.
And after they pass, do you think they can come here and visit anytime they like, or is that limited? I mean,
No, I think they can visit anytime they'd like. I think unless they have a lot of trauma to their soul, they've done really things they have to process or things that have been done to them. At that point, they might not be able to communicate as clearly because they have their own work to do. But spirit can, they don't have a body. So they could be talking to you in Florida, visiting you, and then be visiting Wham the next moment and being in the same space. So because they're no longer limited by time and space.
oh, I swear right now, I don't know. There's no one here at my house talking in the background, and if there is, it's not that big of a deal in yours. But I keep hearing like weird scatter, like someone talking in the background that sounds scattered and weird. Not saying it's ghosts, but I'm trying to figure it out. It's kind of.
I feel like there's a lot of feedback on the channel, is what I hear.
Yeah.
What I'm getting is like there's a lot of feedback. And
I don't.
sometimes that is a way the spirit is communicating is
Not something that
through,
normally happens during a show. I mean,
yeah, weird things do happen around me.
that's what I was wondering. We've had a few weird things, but that was. I don't want to go straight to that ghostly places, ghostly apparitions, but it's like I don't have anyone here talking in the background, so I don't. I hear it, but I can't really make it out. That's why I was wondering if it was like bleeding through to another show. They probably have a million shows going right now. Who knows? Could be
Right.
ghost. I don't know. There was one night we heard drums, and no one had drums, so I don't know what it was. Another time we heard something that sounded like someone a naughty sound clip from XXX that went off during the
A porn show.
Really?
yeah,
Oh my
and
God.
it was none of us. And it was none of us. And like, where the hell did that come from? It freaked us out. There's weird stuff, but who knows? It could be spirits. But do you have a lot of electronic disturbances? You say that kind of happens around it and everything.
Well, yeah, because sometimes spirit, will, like when I first started doing spirit communication, this is way back. Okay. I have been working as a psychic since about 1989, 1990. And when right around the time that I had my major opening to spirit, which was more around 2000, I was letting people record me. I had a tape recorder, and I would record on that. And what started happening was that people were getting their tapes and they were like nothing but white noise. You could hear my voice very softly in the background. I actually did contact some paranormal investigation places because I was like, I'm pretty sure this is spirit related, but is there a way to like stop it or clean it up? And they said that tapes, because they were magnetic, actually were pretty sensitive, and so it wasn't surprising that it was happening. I just gave up on recording people's readings because I didn't know how to do anything about it. Now with digital technology, that doesn't happen as often. People can still get a pretty clear recording, but spirits do interfere with electronics. I haven't been able to wear anything battery operated since I was a little kid. Like I drain batteries, and that is something that's common with other mediums as well, is that they'll find that like, because spirit uses the energy of a medium in order to communicate. The medium's like a conduit or like an electrical cord, if you would. And so, like my phone, I drain my phone battery far quicker than anybody else. Laptops, within a month or two, I can't use my laptop without a cord because my battery is just shot. Back with regular digital watches, I would affect the watch within 1 hour of wearing it. It would have already pretty much lost time and maybe not moving much at all. And then within a couple hours, it'd be just drained. So, and I don't think that's just me. I think that's something that is more common amongst people who are mediums.
And Wham, you drain batteries and stuff
Yep,
like that.
yep. I do that. I don't wear watches. I don't.
I don't wear 'em. I don't wear 'em.
When I carry my phone, I have to carry my phone in a certain way because I do have to carry it with me.
Yeah, I do too, but I always keep mine like in my purse or something.
Yeah, I have to
plug
carry
in.
it away from me
Yeah, and
because
plug it
I
in as soon as you
it.
can.
And the same thing with my laptop. I mean, I had a new battery put in my laptop here, and yeah, it didn't. It just won't hold a charge. I mean,
Yeah, so I look at it because I actually, when I was about 18, 19 years old, I went to a dowsing store, and that's where I actually found out that it was something that happened to other people as well, because I didn't know. I just knew that I couldn't, from the time I was a kid. But when I went to the dowsing store, I think I found a book, and like I said, it was a long time ago. But the book was talking about that people who are channels or mediums sometimes will talk about not being able to hold charges of electrical things, because you're so kind of like open that the spirit isn't just able to tap your energy, it's just using that battery as another source.
Yeah, well, I have to be really careful with energy generally because if I used to not have a lot of control over like my anger spikes and things
Yep.
like that, and I think probably one of the more dramatic things I did was I was really pissed at my boss. This was years and years and years ago, and because he had wanted me to go run an errand for him that was extremely inconvenient. He wanted me to go and to this very exclusive place on the plaza in this city where I lived, Kansas City, where the parking was terrible. And so it would take like 5 times longer to do this than just to go to the hardware store. But he wanted me to go to this place and get a bunch of keys made for him. So I was really mad, and it was a place where they had all these, these machines that were running to do the keys and everything. And I was really mad, and I walked in that store just, with just like this, and blew every fuse in the place.
Yeah. One of my friends
and when they all the electricity went off. And
yeah.
when they went to try to redo the breakers, the main breaker was fused.
Yeah. So it sounds like
somehow I did that. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but
I've had experiences with knocking things off walls. Nothing as extremely as yours, but knowing that was me. But I have a friend of mine who she has blown up her electric stove, her jacuzzi, her that, because she has a lot more telekinetic ability. And one of the things is that, telekinetic ability is also what you're using when you're doing Reiki. It's a reverse of, like, you're using it instead to fry things when you're angry, but sometimes you learning to use an energy source in which you channel will give you it so that it has more control, and you can use it in a way that you choose to.
Yeah, I learned eventually how to control it. I do that with the rune stuff that I do, and a bunch of other things like that. But but electricity has always been sort of, and then years later after that, I was electrocuted, and survived it, obviously, but it sort of changed everything, because that's what being electrocuted does.
Yeah, for sure.
And, so it actually kind of calmed me down a little bit. So
shock therapy, baby. That's right.
Yeah.
And I've been in a room with a glass exploded with my fiance Christina, and it seemed attributed to her in some way, and it was definitely weird. Well, we had a lot of weird stuff happen at that house, from knocking on something hit the bed late at night, and a lot of weird other stuff. I had an experience where I could go outside, and if I closed my eyes and let the sun, that white light, fill me, I went back in that house, and I could have sworn I saw a gray light being standing over an older lady that was her grandmother who was transitioning, and it was almost like astral, like pink, like almost like a weird sunspot you'd see from a flash or the sun, but it was shaped like a humanoid, like one of those gray situations. And I've never seen one of those before that. And it almost seemed like it knew it saw me. And Christina saw one standing over the bed at night over me. And then, of course, I'm thinking of my friend Paul, who was an atheist but lived for me for years. And then after that, he was not. He didn't go full-fledged Christos or anything, but he had dreams of me being taken out the window by aliens. And he woke up and then looked off the balcony and saw something in the sky. And I don't know if I've ever been taken, but I've seen weird stuff over the houses with witnesses. Like, is that there because for me or the whole neighborhood? And then you wonder, did they take me, or are they working with you astrally? If they have taken me, I don't remember anything. They wiped me like a fool because I don't remember going on any ships or anything. But visually, I've seen that craft and weird beings. So people want me to get hypnotized, but I don't really want to. But maybe
you just have this extraterrestrial thing happening, is what you have.
Yeah, I mean it's part. I mean, I've even been like a Mayan alien. I'm seeing all this stuff, But and of course, I always bring up Ron Howard's Cocoon. That's the light beings and the ocean and the cocoon in the swimming pool with the old people that get immortal. Opie definitely did some shrooms for that one, I think, Cocoon 1 and 2. But so does the UFO thing come up a lot with you? Is that something you've seen, or you try to not talk about that particular thing?
I don't. It's not really, doesn't have anything to do with
Death and dying.
Right, with death and dying or my expertise. Like, I have had experiences of my own of different kinds, but not so much with the UFOs.
Yeah, there's been some cases of UFO cases where people have seen deceased loved ones during those experiences. That'd be really weird for sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there are people like Whitley Strieber, for example. I mean, I think the reason why Jeffrey keeps bringing this up is people like Whitley Strieber. He's come to the conclusion that there is some connection between our ancestors and the dead and his visitor experiences. Of course, he won't say that those visitor experiences are extraterrestrials in the classic sense. That's why he calls them visitors. There was a question I wanted to ask you to clarify about. You were talking about the gray. Mm-hmm. And this is, I just want to see if this is what you're talking about. My first spiritual teacher was a medium, and she had a facility with speaking to the dead. That was something that, and they often sought her out. The dead sought her out, and she, wherever she lived, there were spirits around her all the time. In fact, most of the experiences with the dead that I've had have been around her, unless they were personal experiences.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. Well, the question that I had was, she had, one of her abilities was she could tell, like, if she met someone and like they would hold out their hand and she'd shake their hand, she could tell that they were going to die within a period of time, like, I think her outer limit was like about a year, but she said
that's more of a psychic divination ability.
Okay, yeah, because what she said was, this is the way she described it. She said that when she touched them, and she'd get like the time frame and sometimes even how they would die. Mm-hmm. She said that she would perceive this kind of shadow around them, a kind of darkness. And she didn't mean like a darkness, like a bad thing.
Right.
It was more like their spirit was preparing to leave. And so it was almost like a fuzziness.
Yes, you can see that. You can. Like, you can see, because somebody, like you said, does kind of like separate from their body, and people can be in that state for a while, and you can gauge about how long it's going to take. But most people, so psychic abilities they're kind of like, in many ways, it's like a spectrum, but the bottom of that everybody or more people are going to have is empathic ability, which is feeling other people's emotions and feelings. If you go up a little bit, you're going to experience precognition, which is the ability to know things before they happen. And so a person who has precognition also is going to be empathic. A person who can communicate with the spirit world is also most likely going to have precognition and empathic ability. So like I have those, all three of those. And I was working with my precognition from the time that I was 18 publicly, but I didn't start working with the public with my spirit communication ability until I was about 30 because I had a major opening. So there's progression to it. So if she was able to have visitation from spirit, there's also a good likelihood that she was experiencing precognition as its own ability. Okay. So part of like seeing that person separate is because when we are psychic, one of the things that happens is our ability to see into the unseen, like to be able to perceive those things that not everybody else can perceive, whether it's something in the future or whether it's something energetically happening to people. Because I also do healing work. And so I can usually tell as a general rule what's wrong with somebody. Like sometimes it's because I see it, sometimes it's because I feel it, but I can be like, oh, you have problems with your right hip. And people will be like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, well, I'm feeling pain in my right hip or I'm seeing it. And if I go in with my eyes, I can see more. So psychic ability is something that, while everybody has some ability, it's kind of like art that you have to have people with more ability are going to be able to reach further potential, but skill is also involved. I have studied the metaphysical arts my entire life. So for me, it's like where you guys really seem to be, or Jeffrey at least seems to be very, you know, interested. You nerd out on aliens. I nerd out on the spirit world and magic, and those are the things that I have spent my life studying and have had many experiences with. And while I have had experiences that could be described as extraterrestrial, definitely extra dimensional, it's not where my forte is.
And how does sacred storytelling fit into all this? I know I love, folklore from Norse to Native to so many different ones. Is that part of it too, like folklore?
It's more about your personal family lore. Like sacred storytelling is about, creating a relationship with your beloved dead. And part of that, or one of the ways that we form a living relationship with our dead, is by keeping them more in the present. And we do that by telling stories about them. We do that by remembering them. So like if you're making your mom's chocolate chip cookie recipe, you tell stories about her to your children so that they learn about her. That sacredness of it is that you're seeing it as not just a story, but as a way of honoring and connecting with your loved ones in spirit.
So I'm presuming that I mean, you're talking about natal families, biological families.
No.
Okay, that's that. Well, because that's the language that you're using,
right?
But I'm assuming that we're actually talking about anybody who's died
that you consider your loved one. So your beloved dead are your family, your loved ones, ancestors, and spirit guides. They're the spirits that are connected to you. So your teachers in life, your friends, they also fall into that. Even in some cases, it could be, people that you might not have even had a personal relationship with, so to speak, but maybe it was like the minister from your church or those people that were an influence in your life. They might be considered part of your beloved dead that you would honor. It's not our ancestors. Our spiritual ancestors are not limited to our biological relatives, the beloved dead.
Right. Well, and that's a good thing because I'm not overly fond of my
biological. And not everybody is. Some people have really crappy biological relatives.
Yeah, because then that would include like a lot of the work that I do. I guess you would call it ancestral work that I do. I'm part of a spiritual lineage, so we
Yeah,
have different
exactly.
features in that lineage, and so
Yeah.
that would be
Exactly. That'd be a perfect example. They would be part of, like Breja, who I talked about. She is part of My Beloved Dead, but she was a friend of mine who we're part of the same Druid, Druid grove or Druid community, okay, Druid order, but she's a person who I had a very strong relationship with, so I consider her one of my beloved dead as well.
good. Okay. So when you talk about honoring and anointing them, what do you mean by that?
I'm talking about when somebody dies, that we
Okay.
have the right to clean, to wash and oil or perfume our own dead, to groom them in a way that is honoring instead of allowing that last contact to be just with, an undertaker or a nurse, that there's a moment of connecting and giving our honor to those that we care about. And you do not have to do this, but if it's something that you feel drawn to, it's a very powerful thing for healing and also for the spirit, because you are showing such great honor. And you can do this in hospitals too. And if they try to stop you in a hospital, just make sure that you let them know that it's part of your spiritual practice, because that will make them change their mind pretty quickly, because we are entitled to be able to give honor to our loved ones in spirit.
I've helped a number of friends do things like that. When I was in Kansas City, one of the things that I trained in was I can't remember what the society is called now, but it's a society of volunteers in the Jewish community.
Oh, okay. Yep.
That helped to wash and dress the dead for families that don't have the ability to do that, and so I've done quite a bit of that.
That's cool.
And it's cool to do it on behalf of people, for people, not just for your own dead, but
right. Well, there's actually a growing movement of death doulas as well.
Right.
So,
Right.
that is people who either have professional careers or volunteer to help people, to move into dying and with the process of death, which includes in some cases like how to create a funeral or how to wash your dead, those things depending on the doula. But it's really important. I think we need more of that.
Yeah, it's always been a very moving honor to do that. I know that some people it's not for everyone, but
No.
it's I have found it to be very, very profound to work with in the body of a dead person in that way. Because there is a presence there. Even just the body itself has a presence. It has its own presence, and to honor that is an extraordinary thing.
Yes.
For some reason, I'm thinking of those people in I forget what countries they bring them out and give them cigarettes and stuff and bring the bodies out.
No, I know what you're talking about. That might be a little extreme.
A little morbid, but
they're including grandpa with things,
and it is part of their culture. So it's like, while it might be something that I wouldn't feel the need to do, I'm sure that there's a lot of things that I do that other people would find uncomfortable, or like even the fact that I talk to the dead is uncomfortable for some people. But but saying that, like, I actually, like when I was telling you, I have a really normal life. Like, I started my career I live in a small area, and I grew my career word of mouth, and then including having a book publisher, meet with a book publisher who I had my first book before I had it written, and being on Gaia. I've done all of those things from this little tiny area with very little advertising, but it's because I've been able to be part of the mainstream and be able to show people that I'm trying to, in many ways, to make these kind of experiences normal, because they are normal. And I've been able to do it because I'm also a very active member of my community. I am, like I said, I was on a school board for 9 years. So while I do these unusual things, I've been able to, I work with police officers and old ladies and nurses and waitresses. And it's just like I could go into any pub and find people that would be my clients. And I think that the important piece of that is that, while we might have these thoughts that are outside of the norm, one of the things that really separates us is language. Like you pointing out, like being confused because I didn't state that it was not just biological ancestors. I think that happens to us a lot. So kind of like Jeffrey had said something about, what is the difference between, fae beings and aliens? Well, I don't really know, but I think a lot of it is probably language.
Right.
Okay.
Definitely.
So we're in a time period where these kind of supernatural things are becoming more commonplace. And the thing I like to point out to people is that supernatural is still natural, just like supersized fries are still fries. Okay. Supernatural is just more of something. So some of us are experiencing more input. Some people are not sensitive enough to have the experience that others are. And that's like some of us are faster than others. It's again, it's a scale that we live on. We don't all have the same gifts or abilities, but that doesn't mean that somebody who's really strong is not really being that. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I always wonder, I don't know if they have, but I don't know if you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch and all that stuff. In the show and this ranch where all this crazy stuff happens. And basically the government even came forth and said that they've been there studying it. But I know they've brought some like shaman medicine men on, but I don't know if they've ever brought like a psychic. But you would think they would. But one of the fascinating things about that is I found out recently that there's a bunch of ranches in the panhandle of Florida going through similar stuff, but they don't want it out because it'll affect the business. But there's actually investigators going there and stuff. So basically, you have a ranch that has all sorts of different activity that the government even admitted, and it involved aerospace tyrant Robert Bigelow, who bought it, and now he sold it, and they're doing the show. But my point is, the ranch seems to have UFO stuff. I guess I don't know if ghosts particularly, but a lot of weird different stuff, even Bigfoot, some alien, a lot of weird stuff where people get injured or get freaked out and scared and leave and things like that. I know you've gone to properties and dealt with different things. Is it usually ghosts and stuff like that, or does it ever get to a Skinwalker Ranch level?
I've never watched Skinwalker Ranch.
Okay.
So I don't really know if it gets to a Skinwalker Ranch, but I have experienced beings that were not human, dead. I have experienced things that are, more outside of the ordinary. Like I said, I have a tendency to work with elemental beings. Not all elemental. I've had people who've had, earth elementals inside of their house causing ridiculous amount of havoc. So yes, there are some stranger things out there. And when I go to a person's house though that's having activity, my first question is, this goes back to something you said, Wham, is that my first question I ask people is if there's somebody with a mental illness or teenagers living in the house. Because a lot of poltergeist activity is not actually created by a spirit of any kind. It's created by a living person who's having a hard time expressing themselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and they're manifesting all over the place.
Exactly, like that energy's coming out of them and knocking things off the wall. So there's a lot of different ways to approach things.
What do you normally do to, let's say, the earth elemental that's messing with the house or whatever? What do you do? You move. How do you go about that? Offerings, or you force it?
No, I don't. I usually am more of a persuasion, but I will clean and clear and I will force if I have to. But I wrote a whole book about this, and it's not something that really can be like answered in a one-step thing, because you first have to be able to perceive them. If you can't perceive them, it's going to be really hard to work with them. So you first have to develop your ability to see or psychically perceive. So the Path of Elemental Witchcraft, like I said, is a 576 page book. If somebody starts in the beginning of that book, and moves all the way through it, they will learn a tremendous amount about how to develop their psychic abilities and how to perceive into the unseen world. And a lot of those things don't just work with elemental beings, they're going to work with other, the dead or whatever. So,
Well, and we're at the end of the hour. It's been great having you on. We appreciate it so much. What is your website for everybody?
my website is salicrow.com, which is salicrow.com. So again, that's salicrow.com, salicrow.com. And I have all sorts of information on events, and I blog weekly. So it's definitely a good resource. So thank you for having me.
All right. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
All right. You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, everybody. You're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. And what's going on out there? I'm tired. I feel like crap. Like, I don't know. Is there energetically, does everything just feel like shit lately? Or is it just me? Or is it like a universal thing?
If you're going to be astrological, there are some transits. Saturn is going to be going into retrograde and Pluto is doing some stuff. So, like my life in the last 3 weeks has been just weird. Besides me getting sick, which I haven't gotten sick since before the pandemic, right? Right before, I guess the pandemic had started, but we hadn't declared it yet, and I did get a case of COVID. But if you remember, because I wasn't able to be on the show for 2 weeks, but I haven't been sick since then. I'm not really very sick. And I've got this really bad cold last weekend. And I was literally out for 4 days. I slept from Friday night last week till Sunday morning. I slept a total of 24 hours. Not all at once. But I did sleep one 12-hour stretch all at once, without waking up once, without having to pee once.
You hibernated.
I was out. It was bizarre. And I still have some snarfy, but it's much, much better. But
what is it? The flu or?
No, it was a cold. It was just a head cold. And as a head cold goes, I've had worse. It wasn't, it wasn't as bad as they can be, but the fatigue was incredible. It was just like, I at one point I was waking, I would sleep for 4 hours or 5 hours. I would get up, I would eat food and go right back to bed. And then sleep for another 5 hours and wake up and be starving. And I just did this for 2 or 3 days. It was ridiculous. I was up at 3 a.m. eating food and then going back to bed. It was really weird. But anyway, but no, it's been very strange. And, it was interesting that you brought up the death of a child, because where I work yesterday, we had a really awful experience. I work through at a K through 12 institution. So school is just ending. And yesterday was really kind of the last official day that the teachers were there. And I was in, so we were just, it was kind of laid back. So we were all just kind of shooting the breeze. Me and my office mate, we were out talking to one of the hall monitors, who's a part-time instructor. We were just sort of, chit-chatting, talking about things. And I turned to go back into the sort of the inner part of the offices where my office is right now. And I heard this sound. I heard this terrible gasp. And what had happened was this hall monitor, this woman we'd just been talking to, and my office mate was still talking to her. She had just gotten a text from her husband, not her husband, her mother, that their son she needed to come home right now because their son wasn't breathing. And so, of course, she just tore out of the house, and somebody went with her so that she didn't have to go alone. But she only lived, like, their house was only like about half a mile down the road from where work was, where we were. And as she left, we heard the sirens of the emergency vehicles that turned out to be going to her house. And what had happened, I mean, we found out later what happened because the woman that went with her texted us back because we had been there to witness her getting the news. What had happened was that her two-year-old toddler was playing out in the front yard, and her husband was around. Her husband was around, and her mother was around. So, there were adults present, but both of them took their eyes off of him for a minute, and he disappeared. And of course, then they realized he was gone, and they freaked out and started looking around massively, and they found that this is a relatively new house that they moved into. They found that there was this hidden exposed part of a septic tank, and he had fallen into and had drowned. He actually drowned, and they could not revive him. And I mean, it was like, we got this information, and we were just like, I mean, I couldn't talk about it all day. I mean, this is only the third time I've even talked about it. It was like, it was so, because I could not get the sound of her gasp out of my head until like later, today. And it was just, I mean, it was horrific. It's like the worst thing ever, and
it's horrible. I've seen that, like I had said, lately with a lot of different people, and a lot of them are just Facebook authors. I don't really know them that good, but I've just seen them writing a status about their family going through it, and it was just,
Yeah, I mean, it's like anybody who's experienced that or has had the sudden death of a loved one, I was like, oh, God.
I don't know who you're talking to, Rumpelstiltskin, but I'll come and Rumpelstiltskin your ass, mister.
Who are you talking to?
Somebody named Rumpelstiltskin being rude in chat.
Being rude in chat.
Talking about the guests, talking about us. I don't know. So blah, blah, blah. She never get to the point. Someone I've never seen in chat in my life. It's probably
who the guest didn't get to the point?
I don't know. I don't know if they're talking about us or the guests. I don't know. I've never seen them before. But Rumpelstiltskin, I'm calling you out. But anyway, I've never seen Rumpelstiltskin in chat in my entire life. So it's probably some just
you know what?
Fair weather friend.
Buddy, I live where Rumpelstiltskin was supposedly from.
Oh, really?
And I can tell you that you are not worthy of that high exalted name.
What is Rumpelstiltskin again? That's like the dude that made you do gold or make gold or something, or kept the chick in the power or something, right? Or something.
Yeah. He's a troll. He's a nasty little short person.
Exactly. That's what I figured. But
so anyway, so talking about the dead was very weird.
Yeah, there was one time I had a situation where I had to tell someone that someone was dead, and I had to hear that they screamed, and you don't ever forget it, for sure.
No, you don't.
There was a guy I knew. His name was Numbers. That was like his little fake internet name, whatever, his handle or whatever. And I didn't really know him that well. This was a long time ago. I think I played Warcraft 3 with him sometimes, like some RTS game with orcs and stuff, and we fight each other in that. But anywho, he was dating some girl. I don't want to say their real names, but I don't talk to her. I haven't seen her in like 10 years or more, maybe longer than that. But the point is, her husband was a famous race car driver, and she was having an affair with this Numbers guy. And he actually like tried to send pictures of them being together to the race car driver to break it up so she would come be with him. But it went sour, and he took his own life on cam in front of her on Yahoo
Oh
chat.
God. Oh God.
And he was on coke and Xanax. You got to be crazy to do that. I didn't really know him that good, but anyway, I had to deal with the police and go to the police and talk to them and all that crap. I had to tell her that it was crazy. But those situations, I've noticed an uptick with children. But I mean, I don't know if it's an uptick necessarily, but I don't normally see that. So it's just creepy for sure.
Yeah, it's just awful to have to, it was kind of like, well, and then it completely triggered my office mate because she's a mom. She's got three kids. And when she told me that when she was 10, her brother almost drowned in the bathtub when her father was giving him a bath and just left for a second to get a towel he'd forgotten. Now he was revived, but he had really bad brain damage and died relatively young. So obviously, just even knowing about this and being in proximity to it, completely triggered her. So she and I, we both just kind of sat in the office, just sort of. We didn't talk a lot. We just kind of gave each other silent support. You know what I mean? It was just so intense.
Yeah,
it was just like a heavy darkness over the whole place yesterday after that.
That is rough. I know I've only seen 2 dead bodies in my life. Christina's grandmother's, and I had to help do stuff to prepare it and stuff. I'll never forget that. And then I saw my dad after he had a heart attack on the thing in the hospital, and his nose was bleeding and stuff. It's just stuff you remember. You don't ever forget it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've experienced several dead bodies. Yeah,
it sucks. I don't like it. Don't want to see them. I know I had Paul Condoderis. I probably messed his name up. Koudounaris. Really cool dude, but he wrote a book with pictures, Memento Mori, The Dead Among Us.
Oh,
And he went to Ethiopia, Nepal, Cambodia, all kinds of places, just taking pictures of their customs. We had him on the show a long, long time ago.
Oh, I think I remember that, actually.
Yeah. He's on Facebook, and he's always posting cool, weird stuff, like finding old weird buildings out in the desert and weird stuff, like crazy, creepy, weird places that are neat, like architectural kind of stuff. And that book's pretty cool. It's like a nice big blue book. But have you watched any of the new Star Trek?
I have. Oh no, I have. And in fact, I have some terrible Star Trek news that will piss people off who care about
that cartoon, isn't it?
It's about Prodigy. Yeah, what they did to Prodigy, what they've done with Prodigy.
I saw that right before the show. I've never seen the show, but I saw that.
Well, and you'll have to watch it soon, because not only have they canceled season 2, which was already in post-production, apparently they're going to let them finish the post-production so that they can take like season 1 and season 2 and try to peddle it somewhere else. But they're actually going to remove season 1 from Paramount. They're not even going to archive it. They're just going to remove it. And it's like, everybody that's all about Star Trek, which I am, everybody was like, we were so happy that all of Star Trek was finally in one place. It's like, what the hell are you people doing? So I know there's going to be this huge backlash, but anyway, if you want to, there's only one season of Star Trek Prodigy.
It is on Blu-ray. Is
it on Blu-ray? Season one is?
I just checked, yeah.
Because I may have to check that out, but if you want to see it on Paramount Plus, you got to see it this weekend, because they're gonna remove it sometime early next week.
Was it that great? Was it okay?
No, I've heard that it was quite good. It's gotten really good reviews. It was to try to bring. It was continuing some of the ideas of Voyager, and Kate Mulgrew, who who is Janeway. She's the voice of Admiral Janeway in it. So she's like in it, but it was a joint venture by Paramount Plus and Nickelodeon. And it was intended to appeal a little bit more to younger viewers, but apparently, I mean, it's considered canon now. I mean, it's apparently carried on all of the themes and continued a lot of the very important story points from other places. So it's legit. And the idea that they would just remove it, and their excuse was, well, we're merging with Showtime because that's what Paramount Plus is doing, and so we had to remove some stuff from our lineup. It's like, why? It's all streaming. it's all streaming. But anyway, so they decided that they would pick on the one Star Trek that doesn't have an adult viewership, basically, for the most part. But there are actually lots of adults who view it. So I'm going to watch it this weekend. And
they're doing that in a lot of places with stuff, just taking it down. Just get.
Oh, I know. It's driving me crazy.
Save money, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's what they claim. I don't buy it.
There was the coolest superhero show ever called Doom Patrol, DOOM on HBO. And I don't know, it got great reviews. It was really good. And Brosnan was in it. Timothy Brosnan, is that the guy's name? A lot of different people. No, I'm mixing up two people. But the guy, Brandon Fraser's this robot in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a weird misfit superhero, like, they're just a bunch of like crazy mutants that made a superhero team. One lady turns into a blob. It's from an old comic book that's been around for a long time. But they canceled it. And I swear, I think they canceled it like mid-season. Like they released one half of the season and then the second like just vanished.
Yeah. Well, and yeah. I mean, I think what they're doing, they've, Picard is over. Star Trek Discovery or whatever that has one more season left, and they haven't finished shooting it because of the writers the writers strike, which is still going on. But Strange New Worlds is doing really, really well, and Lower Decks is doing really well, which I would recommend Lower Decks too. That's another animated, but it's more adult. It's all about the non-main characters, you know what I mean? The ensigns, the midshipmen, the people who are at a lower level in the ship, and it's pretty funny, actually. It's pretty amusing.
I know they're supposed to do a crossover.
Yeah, crossover from Lower Decks. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I want to watch the old movies. See, I've seen a lot of Star Trek, but I've never sat down and watched the series like every single episode. It's more like, oh, this is on TV, I'm watching it. Like I did that when I was a kid, so I never. But I'd like to sit down and like actually watch everything.
Well, yeah, do it while you can, because except for Prodigy, everything is on Paramount, so you can.
Yeah. I'm excited about Friday the 13th prequel show, and I know that's coming to Peacock. I know at first everybody's probably like, oh, but listen to who's involved. And right now I just forgot his name, but he's the same dude that did Hannibal, that show.
Oh, yeah.
The one with Mads Mikkelsen that was really good that the dumbasses canceled, and I wanted to go to their studio, neck it, and say I am becoming and destroy them. And it was so good. Like Eddie Izzard was in it. Like it was great. And it got great reviews, but not enough viewers. So they canceled it. But it had like 5-star reviews.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. It's like Prodigy has gotten really good reviews. If you like Star Trek, you like it, basically. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit different.
Kind of looks like a video game or a picture.
Well, that's the type of animation that they're using.
Yeah.
but it's not like a video game.
I want to see the Gremlins cartoon. That's getting good reviews. I haven't watched it. That's on Max. Max. Well, that's stupid. I read somewhere that HBO did that so they wouldn't have to pay writers or something. Like drop the HBO, like some weird thing going on.
Well, that's part of it. It's because of the writer's strike. It's part of it.
Someone's got a question. Is the original Star Trek animation from the 70s on Paramount? And he has the novels by Alan Dean Foster. I'd have to look up those novels. That sounds interesting. But I think the old animations on Paramount of Star Trek. Yeah,
you can also see it on Amazon Prime. The animated series is on Amazon Prime.
I wouldn't mind watching those. That sounds cool. Cool. Reminds me of they kind of look like the Ralph Bakshi animation, sort of.
Yeah.
I love his stuff. Like I'll hunt down his stuff and watch it. He's got some weird stuff. Felix the cat. That was weird. There's a part 2 to that. I missed that one. Like it's supposed to be like an X-rated cartoon, and I didn't really, I didn't find myself percolating to it. It's more like, what the hell is going on here? But it was fun to watch. But my favorite thing is that Lord of the Rings cartoon he did. Oh man, that was so good.
Yeah.
And then the Hobbit. I don't know if he did the Hobbit cartoon, but I love that one. Return of the King wasn't that great, but it's still fun to watch. But those Alan Dean Foster, I have to look those up. Alan Dean. Oh, you skipped an entire second season of Picard because of Q, but you saw it.
No. I did watch it.
Okay,
I did watch it. I just complained the whole time.
What did you think about? I bet you hated the end of Picard when he shows up.
I thought to myself, what I thought to myself was, well, I'm glad that this series is ending. It just means we're going to have to put up with this crap somewhere else. Maybe like if they do, a Star Trek Legacy series at some point, that it's like, I just really don't like Q. Yeah. Now I know that was the beginning premise for even the pilot of the New Generation. I understand that, but I have a right to not like what I don't like. I just think it's stupid.
Well, even when I saw him there at the end, I was like, "You kidding me, right?"
It's like stop it.
I looked up Alan Dean Foster, and there's like a neat book set of Star Trek books, 3 in 1 volume or something. Star Trek Log 1, 2, and 3, best-selling author. I saved it, so I'll have to look it up. But I wouldn't mind reading some Star Trek novels. Thought about the comics some, but there's so much to keep up with all that crap.
Well, there's some of the really good ones. There's let me see what it's called real quick. So I can give you the correct information. Hold on. Star Trek. Whoop.
I have a bunch of those V books that they did from that V Reptilian series.
Right.
A bunch of novels.
Here it is.
They're pretty weird.
There's a trilogy that's called Star Trek Destiny. Star Trek Destiny, number 1, number 2, and number 3. David Mack is the author. And what's interesting about this is that it creates these really important kind of canonical links between the new generation and Deep Space Nine. So that you can kind of see how sort of the evolution, sort of untold stories, like maybe things that in episodes were sort of left hanging, and it joins them together. So it links I think it links Deep Space Nine, the New Generation, and a little bit of Voyager together.
Is it David Mack?
David Mack, yeah. And there's it's a trilogy. It's like Destiny 1, number 1, number 2, and number 3. And that's actually one of the better and considered to be one of the more important kind of, novelistic treatments I've got like, let's see here. I've got several others. Oh, this one by Una. I haven't read it yet. By Una McCormick, called Enigma Tales. It's part of Deep Space Nine, but it kind of gives stories about Cardassia after the Dominion War, and it focuses a lot on Garrick, who is a favorite character in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I know Gene Roddenberry's had some other show, Earth Final Conflict. You ever heard of that? I came across that recently. I haven't watched it, but it's called Earth Final Conflict. And
Yeah, something like that.
Created by Gene Roddenberry. There's like 4 or 5 seasons. I've never seen it, but I came across it by accident somehow.
Oh, and this one right here, The Missing. This is I see. Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek show, other than Strange New Worlds, which is I really love it. But this woman named Una McCormick, she's done a lot of stuff with the Deep Space Nine kind of narrative, and so she's written several that follow the career of Ro Laren. Remember, Ro Laren showed up in Picard, and it follows her when she was on Deep Space Nine, because she did do a stint on Deep Space Nine after she left the Maquis. So I got like a whole bunch of like Deep Space Nine novels that I haven't read yet. So yeah, I'm a little bit of a Star Trek geek. I mean, I don't like do the cosplay and go to the conventions and I don't. The only crazy things I'll buy are Blu-ray and novels. I don't buy, like, some people nerd out about all the ships, the different iterations of the Enterprise. And I don't care that much about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the old movies. I don't know. I remember seeing those at the drive-in with my dad. The old, the Wrath of Khan and all that. I wouldn't mind watching those again at some point. They're on Paramount. Ooh, they're coming out with a comic that's Predator versus Wolverine. The Predator alien versus Wolverine. The dude with the claws.
Right.
That sounds interesting. That's I know Marvel and Disney has Predator and Aliens now, which they've been milking it to death. There's supposed to be some interesting movies coming out, and a series of a guy, Noah Hawley. He did that Fargo series on what was it, FX? It was actually really good. And then he did a show called Legion, Legion, but that's really weird and about like Xavier from X-Men's son. And that was weird. Did you see that show, Legion? That was crazy weird.
No, I didn't see it. I did hear about it though, but no, I didn't see it.
It's worth the watch. It's definitely different. But the guy's doing an alien show now, and he seems pretty gifted. So I'm hoping. Here's hoping it doesn't suck. I don't think they've never done an alien TV show. Surprisingly, just movies of the penis H.G. Geiger alien. Or is it Giger?
It's Geiger. It's Geiger.
I mess up every word. But I have a tattoo from his art book, and it's one of my first dumb tattoos I got. And there was this guy with a mohawk was like, "You want horns on that?" I was like, "Yeah." At Little 5 Points, Georgia, the crazy like punk, crazy heavy metal place back in the day. It's commercialized now, commercialized crap I hear, but it's supposed to people walking around, dressed like Dracula and weird stuff, like this whole little area of Atlanta that's really weird, but cool. But I don't think it's probably still nice in some ways, but it's changed a lot, I've heard. There's so many things that they got rid of in Atlanta. They moved the Masquerade. That was a place I used to go see concerts at. Saw Megadeth there, and they had like heaven, hell, and purgatory 3 levels. That place seemed really haunted. I guess they moved it, and hopefully I think that place was historical, so hopefully they didn't tear it down or anything. But I find it interesting about these ranches having all this stuff. It makes you wonder, like, how many are really going through all this, like, Mira of the Skinwalker Ranch gamut of genericness. But it seems like it may be happening, that it is at a lot of different places. But the crappy part is not knowing. You're never going to really know what places, because
Yeah.
they're afraid of the business hurting their business, and that's understandable. But here's the thing that I saw. I haven't seen it yet, but they have a new show. I'm behind on Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. I've seen the first season. I haven't seen the rest, and I'm hesitant to do so because at the end of the first season, they pretty much agreed that they are going to be working with the government still, and they have a meeting about it. And it was just kind of like, really? They're like the part of the problem, the government spooks. You're going to work with them again. They've already probably taken knowledge or whatever out of that place and milked it dry and then sold it to your dumb ass. But anyway, they're doing a show called Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, and it's them going to other ranches that it's happening at. But then
Other ranches.
Yeah, other ranches. And then I looked it up, and it's the same damn dudes from the first show. It's like, you need to put some new people in it. I don't want to see these people again. But I may watch it sometime. I like the subject matter. Image Comics is putting out a comic of the hunt for Skinwalker. They just had a Kickstarter for it. It's pretty interesting, and they're putting out a new version of the Hunt for the Skinwalker book. But a whole, a comic illustrating all the cases and stuff, and then of course the new updated Hunt for the Skinwalker. I still haven't read the Pentagon Skinwalker one. Did you ever get that?
No, because honestly, I don't. Can I tell you something?
Yeah,
I don't care about Skinwalker Ranch. I think a lot of it is hype, and it's not that I don't think anything ever happened there, but it's like that blog that I did about that whole area, the Uinta Basin. When I found out that Skinwalker Ranch was part of a much larger thing,
yeah,
and that that a full 30 years before anybody on Skinwalker Ranch reported anything, something almost identical was reported at a ranch in Colorado. And this is while the previous owners were on Skinwalker Ranch on that ranch and never reported anything. That I just have my doubts about how much has actually happened there. I mean, one of the things I think is really interesting is that, people have reported lots of stuff there, but somebody like George Knapp, who of course is, one of the principal journalist reporters of the whole thing and, wrote the first book about it.
Yeah.
He's never had hardly any experience there at all. And he's stayed out there several times. So it's like, to me, I'm like, I don't know. I just.
There's some overhype going there. I mean, you can definitely tell that. It's like they're Hollywooding it out or something.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, once you start doing that to something.
It'll be a theme park next.
Yeah, I mean, once you start doing that to something, at that point, it becomes impossible to tell exactly what's going on or whatever happened there, really.
Yeah.
So it's too commercial for me at this point. I don't care. I'm tired of hearing about it.
The Jacques Vallée thing interests me about it, but we'll never know that for sure either.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know.
So die. And I don't know. Did you see any of the Las Vegas stuff? We had Wild Trees on. He talked about that, and then this family, claimed they saw alien grays. But it was interesting. But who knows what's fake and what ain't anymore? But as far as what he said, he said he seemed like the police were pretty shaken up about it, and they actually said they saw something fall from the sky in the area. So that added to it. That kind of made it creepier.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but again, it was one of those things where so much was made of it so quickly.
Yeah.
That I don't know what happened there.
And then, of course, there's some people with their holograms as Project Bluebeam. It's a fake alien invasion, and you got that whole thing. But and supposedly they left cameras there to watch after for anything else that happened. And I guess, any weirdos that came there looking for aliens or whatever, so they can like watch basically the house from their police station, the backyard or whatever. So that's pretty weird. So obviously something happened there, but we'll never know what. And then a lot of these cases, what did you think about, let's say, Phoenix Lights? And then there's a similar case, Stevensville, Texas, where these things park over cities.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to wonder if that's some kind of government psychological, test or something with their, see how people react to it and stuff like that. I don't see aliens just parking over a city for the hell of it and not saying anything,
I don't know what I think about that. I mean, there's this YouTuber that I follow. Let me see if I can find his name. There, and he
seems more like a psychological thing to me that they're probably doing.
Yeah. Oh, his YouTube channel is called Mr. MBB333.
I know of that guy.
Yeah, and he does some pretty good stuff sometimes. Like he did this thing last week where he apparently got in, like, over a period of several days. He apparently got in, like, from several different places, and not only in the US but in the world, videos of apparently what really looked like kind of the same thing. And they were all happening. People all had made their videos like within 24 or 36 hours of each other in very different parts of the world. And they seemed to be filming something very similar. So I don't know what that is. That's the kind of thing, though, that fascinated John Keel. Because and that's the sort of thing that he, before computers, that he thought might be a key to the phenomena, where you have stuff that's being seen over here, and then at exactly the same time, sometimes to the hour, you'll have something happening over here, like across the country. And it may be similar, or they may complement each other in a weird way. But that's kind of what I was talking about in my book, Mysterious Beauty, about the Hudson Valley, because sometimes what happens in the Hudson Valley is in one area, you'll have a whole bunch of UFOs or fireballs or something that are seen, like in one part of the valley. And then at about the same time, complete, 100 miles away at the top of the valley, you'll have a bunch of Bigfoot sightings, and they would be happening at kind of the same time during the same time frame. But because the two groups of people who were seeing things didn't know that was going on, it was never correlated. So he thought that kind of stuff is, that's what having a good database will give you. If you can create a good database where you can start seeing some of these things, he thought that eventually computers would be able to figure out patterns there, that might give us a clue as to what the hell is going on.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if some of it was government psychological, but I could also see advanced beings doing it to raise consciousness somehow, because I had that weird experience where I said a prayer to get guests when I first started out after the Jeremy Vianney fight, and I had to get guests on my own, and I said that prayer, and I had a weird UFO red fireflies, I called them, and I screamed, and my brother and nephew saw them. It's almost like they saw us seeing them.
Right.
And then somehow I told some lady, and I ended up on a radio show that had something to do with MUFON, and somehow I got guests. Like I was Stanton Friedman next, Lloyd Pye, and just all kinds of people I didn't think, that were from documentaries, and you get kind of like, wow, that's cool and everything, but it seemed connected in some weird way. Like, it's like, did aliens give me the interview hookup? Like, it was like a weird boost. So that was kind of weird. So I think there is some stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what it means, but the fact that all of these different things sort of overlap with each other, I mean, that to me has got to be significant. I just don't know. I just don't know what it means.
And then, of course, you have the thing, they're raising our consciousness so we can be intergalactic citizens. Yes, the
Whatever the hell
visitor,
that is.
the visitors are your friends. If you see V back in the day, that show V with the
Yeah,
reptilian,
I did see it back in the day.
that's
Yeah.
something else. I have all those. I'd like to watch them again. They actually made little figures for children of that.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I have some of it. There's a Ken doll that you can take his face off, and it's a lizard. He looks like a Ken doll in that red outfit, and you take his face off, and it's a lizard with a tongue. I have that. It's old, and the box is kind of messed up, but it ain't been opened really. But the box got some weathering, but I don't care. I have it. Some weird stuff. And they also made little weird novels. There's actually some weird one about a Florida reptilian base, and then the title was something weird about Florida. But those are they did some new series of it. I never watched them all, but they canceled it, of course. A newer V. I've heard talks they're gonna do something else with it at some point. The guy that made it actually wrote some interesting novels that are basically the same story, just in novel form. That's pretty good. Let me see who's coming up. Mike Hacker next week, I believe.
Yay, Mike! Yay!
We're going to be talking about Jacques Vallée and all kinds of other stuff. All kinds of other stuff. And then July 7th, Sunbow True Brother. It's like this hippie Quebec dude that's in with Sasquatch. So that should be weird. And
does he have nice. Does he have a book, or is he just talking?
He's got books, but I mean, I don't have any of them. I don't own any of them. I didn't get any from him or anything, but they're on Amazon. I've been thinking about buying them, but I probably won't before I interview him or whatever. I know he has some Kawani connections and Kawani's wife, and they do a bunch of stuff together, like this guy and they do. That's all I know, but I know usually what I do if I don't have the book is just go to Amazon and open it and look at the table of contents. So, but he's not necessarily just, I'm sure we'll bring up the books, but it's not really, they've been out for a while. So I know I've been trying to read that Psychic Sasquatch. Kawani's definitely a weird dude. I mean, he seems pretty sincere, but you don't know what to think about it still with a lot of it, but he definitely seems sincere. And the book Psychic Sasquatch has been around for a long ass time.
A long ass time.
A long ass time. There's something about Bigfoot giving him a shoulder rub, a massage. Bigfoot gave him a shoulder rub. I remember someone laughing about that. Of course, there was some weird Andy Kawani wars back in the day, but I don't remember it enough to tell the story. Something happened, but I don't remember all of it, so I'm not gonna tell it. But anywho, let me see who else. Samuel Chong. That's when Jay comes back. That's a Chinese dude that says he got taken to an alien planet. The
alien planet.
Thebia prophecy or something. Michelle says he's a good guest, and he came from my publicist friend Mark Eddy, who's co-hosted a million years ago. So he knows Michael Carter, so it's going to be good. And then an old friend, Jeffrey Shanks, about weird archaeology. He's been on before with what's that guy, Mark Finn, about Conan and Lovecraft and all kinds of weird stuff. And then Harold Sanford Carter III is like this pagan radio guy that came to me from the group wanting to be on the show. And then we got Jim Saylor, who's rescheduled when you'll be here. He's a magician and he's going to do tricks on cam. Like he gets on stage and does, stuff like that. So hopefully he's going to do some card tricks. That'll be a new one. We get to see some card tricks.
Cool.
Dun, 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 dun. The illusion. And then Brad Smith does creature movie feat reviews. And then I'm working on, I got another guy. I need to get the book for you. Mike. What a last name. Mike Michalowski. I'll spell it. He's got some ghost book from Invisible Press Inc., a ghost story in every state. But I'll spell that last name. Wow. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if it's Polish or what it is, but Did I do Mike? No, the Mike is part of it. It's like Mike, Mikek Ozlowski. And at first I was like, did I typo Mike twice and have a typo? But that's his name. That's might be getting Nick Redfern on about a werewolf book. That's through that
Cool.
publisher.
A
I've
werewolf
interviewed Nick
book.
quite a few times. It's just been a while. He did a werewolf book with Brad Steger, and
Oh, yeah.
it's having a reprint.
No, interesting.
I interviewed Brad a few times.
Yeah,
He's
you-
another one that passed away that
you-
sucked.
yeah, you.
So many people from COVID. I don't know if it's COVID, probably. I couldn't believe Angela Joyner passed away, and her husband.
Oh, Allison Joyner? Yeah.
Well, no, it's Angela, the Stevensville, Texas journalist lady.
Right.
Yeah. And her husband, I forget his name, but they passed from COVID, both of them.
Wow.
They used to be on the network. I interviewed her before about all that a long time ago. There's been a lot of weird stuff like that. Just people croaking. Stephanie Benetti, who used to be on the network, I couldn't believe she passed away.
Right.
I interviewed Angela Perrin with her, that Conjuring lady.
Yeah.
It's like you find out all these people, man. It's like it's nonstop. Then you realize you're next. And then you are. There's my madness right there. But I want to get a good Halloween lineup. Something creepy. Something good.
See if you can. We've had. Oh, I was thinking of Allison Jornlin. That's who I was thinking of.
Oh yeah.
Because she does that. She does those haunted road trips.
Yeah, she'd be a good Halloween. She was on once. Were you here when we interviewed her?
Yeah. She does American Ghost Walks. She's from Milwaukee. She's the one who did all that research and exposed that all those Milwaukee Mothmen things were complete BS. all their sightings. So if see if she'd be willing to come back on, because I really liked her stories.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I know she'd come back on. It's just I had to ask her. One of the biggest things was scheduling. You get caught up in these publicists, and then next thing you know, they make it so easy for you. You run out of dates and stuff. But mine are free right now for the most part after August or September and stuff. They hijack your schedule. They take it. They do a good job. Llewellyn did a really good job, but now I'm like, you got anything else? Nothing. Don't hear anything. Got a Halloween book coming out. Hopefully I'll hear something. But looking for Halloween type stuff for sure. So yeah, I'll ask her, because I usually start that in September anyway. It's like September is the start of Halloween lineup for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For sure. But so what kind of music you listen to?
Lately I haven't been listening to anything special, other than because I mostly don't have time to listen to music, and except when I'm commuting back and forth from my job. So what I've been listening, I have like I have all of this of the Twin Peaks, the various Twin Peaks soundtracks, plus some additional related music that David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti did. Okay. And so I just play them on rotation in my there. I actually have a CD player in my old car that works, and so I just play the CDs on rotation is what I do, honestly. And that's all I've been listening to in terms of music specifically. I mean, every now and then I'll listen to something on, like groups on YouTube or something, like Baby Metal who I happen to like, put a new album out in late March. And, but I haven't really been paying too much attention to music lately, honestly. So
Yeah, I've been on YouTube and listened to like
yeah.
meditation kind of stuff. Came across some guy, Loyal Lowell Johnson, but he was like talking about light beings. That was pretty interesting about light being kind of. I like to put in weird stuff in YouTube, like light beings, and all kinds of weird stuff comes up, like frequency music. And but this guy was like an actual guest on the show talking about specifically that, and had some pretty interesting stories. And there's some other guy that was pretty interesting that was talking about that kind of stuff. Uh, you can find some weird stuff on there. My mom got premium YouTube, and I can use it too, so it's a lot better that way. They're idiots on there with commercials. Like too many. It's like, man, you go for the premium. But anywho, that show From's pretty good. It's kind of got a lot of horror in it, a little too much sometimes, like some killing scenes. But the complexity of it, that's going on, like they're like basically getting trapped in this reality, and everybody sees a tree before they get there that's fallen in the road and crows, but then they end up in this town and you get trapped there. You can't leave. You try to leave with your car, you go back there, and then at night these things come out that won't in, and if you let them in they skin you, and they're vicious and they eat you. They don't, I don't know if they, it seems like they eat you, but they mess you up, and they like it, and they're kind of, they don't really say what they are, kind of vampire like. uh but not to get into it too much, but then season 2, it seems like there's a new presence that comes to you in your nightmares and can get you. So one guy's freaking out thinking it's a government experiment. One dude thought it was like one of those escape rooms, and he's going around thinking it's a joke, and his friend paid for it, and he learned fast that's not the case. But for a horror show, I haven't seen a horror show good in a long time. I can't even think of any horror shows that are that great. It's actually pretty good. Stephen King's been plugging it. That's why I got back into it. But I'd started at some point and didn't finish it or something. But it's definitely good. And then Harold Perrineau or I can't. I know it's a black dude. He was in Oz, that crazy prison show. He's in a bunch of good stuff. He's the sheriff. It's got he's the lead black sheriff, and he does a really good job. He's good in anything, but he was in specifically that Oz show with the prison on HBO and stuff. I wouldn't watch that again, but it was worth the watch one time. Too many prison dongs going on at one time. Crazy Nazi stuff. That's a good show, but man, it got crazy poop bags thrown at you and stuff. It's like worth the watch. It's worth one good watch, but I don't know if I can go back to Oz. I get too dirty. Need a shower.
You're funny. You're just so funny.
It is
when
a good
you
show.
get fixated on.
It is a good show though, but I don't know if I'd do it again. I don't that Star Wars Andor show is supposed to be good. It seems different. It has a Skarsgård, the dad. I can't remember his name right now, but he's like one of the it guy's dad. The guy that plays Floki in Vikings, that whole family, the dad's in it, the older dad. He's like the villain in it. But it's more like it's kind of not your traditional Star Wars kind of show, and seems to be more complex, like spies and espionage and weird stuff like that. But man, 2 minutes. You listen to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM New Orleans. I'm supposed to drive and go pick up Christina's car from the airport, and she's coming back in July. And I don't normally go on the freeway. I hate it, so I'm freaked out about it. My brother's going to drive me there, and then I'll follow him home, so it won't be that bad. But it's like an hour or so. I just do not like being in traffic and stuff. It's
right.
Too many people that you're relying on not to do something stupid to kill you.
Yeah.
I hate it. I'll be freaked out the whole time about it. I don't like it. But I've done it before, but it's just been a while. But all right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Hopefully Jay will be back. He's been missing shows because of Home Depot and a kidney stone. And make sure he's alive. And Wild Trees and Bobby Dizzle have been filling in for him. So hopefully he'll be back his next round. All right, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thanks, Wham. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Take it easy. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.